The phone rang at exactly 9:03 a.m. on a Monday that would change everything. Marlo Bennett stared at the cell phone screen as if it were a grenade about to explode. Stafford and Associates blinked insistently. Her heart plummeted to her bare feet on the threadbare carpet of her tiny Brooklyn apartment. She knew what it was, the rejection call, 3 days earlier. "Congratulations, Miss Bennett. You've been selected for the final stage," the agency recruiter had practically sung over the phone. "Just a small administrative skills test, and you'll be competing for the position of executive secretary to Mr. Dashiell Kane." Marlo had bounced around her apartment as if she'd won the lottery. Dashiell Kane, the construction magnate who appeared in Forbes every year. Of course she'd heard the rumors. Explosive temper, impossible standards, secretaries who lasted less than flowers in a vase. But the salary? 6 figures. With that money, she could finally pay off her mother's treatment debts and maybe, just maybe, breathe again. The test had been a spectacular disaster. Questions about software she'd never used, hypothetical situations that seemed like psychological traps, and that damn typing section where her trembling fingers transformed attach the fiscal report into attach the physical report. Back to the present. Handshaking, Marlo answered. "Miss Bennett." The voice was masculine, deep, impatient. Definitely not the sweet recruiter from before. "Yes?" she whispered, bracing for the blow. "You start tomorrow. 7 a.m. sharp. Main office on 5th Avenue. Don't be late. Mr. Kane doesn't tolerate delays." Silence. What? "You were selected. Congratulations." The word sounded like a threat. "Didn't someone from the agency call you?" "No, Wait, are you sure? Marlo Bennett? Bennett? An irritated sigh from the other end. "It's on my paper here. Marlo J. Bennett. Is that you or not?" "It's me, but then see you tomorrow, 7 a.m. The call ended. Marlo stood frozen, phone still glued to her ear, the sound of the dead line echoing. This didn't make sense. She had ruined the test. She was absolutely certain. Unless. Her stomach churned as reality hit her like a runaway train. Mistake. It had to be a mistake. Maybe there was another Marlo Bennett. Maybe someone had typed the wrong number into the system. Maybe. The phone rang again. Stafford Agency. "Miss Bennett?" The recruiter, now with a tense voice. "There's been a terrible mix-up. Unfortunately, you weren't selected for the position. I'm terribly sorry for the inconvenience." Marlo hung up before the woman finished. Her apartment suddenly seemed smaller, the walls closing in. The medical bills stacked on the coffee table stared at her cruelly. 3 months of overdue rent, the manager threatening eviction. She looked at the phone in her hand. 2 calls, one saying she got the job, one saying she didn't. And at 9:15 a.m. on an absolutely ordinary Monday, Marlo Bennett made the most insane decision of her life. Tomorrow, at 7 a.m., she would be on 5th Avenue. To hell with the truth. The Kane Tower pierced the Manhattan skyline like a steel dagger, all glass and arrogance. Marlo stood on the opposite sidewalk at 6:47 a.m., clutching a coffee she was too nauseous to drink, wondering if prison food was really as bad as they said. Because fraud was a crime, right? Impersonating an employee? She'd Googled it at 3 in the morning, then immediately cleared her search history like a criminal. "You're not impersonating anyone," she told herself firmly. "They called you. They said your name. If they made a mistake, that's on them." The logic was paper thin, but it was all she had. At 6:55, she crossed the street. Her only professional outfit, a navy blazer with a small coffee stain she'd tried to hide with a strategic scarf, suddenly felt like a costume. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and intimidation, where even the security guard looked like he earned more than her yearly income. "Marlo Bennett," she said, voice steadier than she felt. "For Mr. Kane." The guard checked his tablet, nodded, and handed her a badge. 63rd floor. Good luck. The way he said it sounded like a condolence. The elevator ride lasted an eternity. Marlo watched the numbers climb, her reflection in the polished doors showing a woman who looked like she was heading to her execution. Which, honestly, wasn't far from the truth. The 63rd floor opened to a reception area that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a view of Central Park. Everything was white, chrome, and deliberately cold. A woman in her 50s with a severe bun and glasses that screamed, "I've seen everything," looked up from her desk. "You must be the new secretary." Her lips twitched. "I'm Patricia, executive assistant to Mr. Kane's VP. Your desk is there." She pointed to a sleek workstation outside massive double doors. "He arrives at 7:30. Coffee, black, no sugar, exactly 175 degrees. His schedule is on the system. Password is on the note I left you. Don't ask him personal questions. Don't make small talk. Don't cry in his office. Use the bathroom on 62 for that." Noted. The last girl lasted 4 days. The one before that, 6 hours. Patricia's expression softened microscopically. "Advice? Develop a thick skin real fast, or get out before he destroys whatever self-esteem you walked in with." At 7:29, Marlowe had logged into the system, password, efficiency 2024, located the coffee machine that probably cost more than a car, and was arranging files she didn't understand when the elevator dinged. Every head in the office turned. Dashiell Kane strode in like a storm given human form. He was younger than she expected, mid-30s maybe, with dark hair that looked artfully disheveled in that way that required expensive stylists. Charcoal suit tailored so precisely it was practically a weapon. But it was his face that made her breath catch, sharp jawline, ice-blue eyes that missed nothing, and an expression of permanent displeasure, as if the world was a restaurant that kept getting his order wrong. He was objectively, devastatingly handsome. He was also clearly the biggest jerk she'd ever seen. "Where's my coffee?" His voice cut across the space without him even looking at her. Right here, Mr. Kane." Marlowe grabbed the mug, nearly spilling it in her haste. He took it, sipped, and his eyes, those terrifying blue eyes, locked onto her for the first time. "You're not Melissa." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "I'm Marlowe Bennett, Mr. Kane. The agency." "I know who you are." He cut her off like she was an annoying commercial. "The question is, are you competent? The agency promised me someone with a brain this time, not another Instagram model who thinks excel is a motivational verb." Marlowe's jaw tightened. "I assure you, I'm very competent." "We'll see." He thrust a leather portfolio at her. "I have a meeting with the Kingston developers in 45 minutes. I need the Morrison contract revised. Clauses 7 and 12 are unacceptable. Send it to legal for review, then get me the environmental impact reports from the Philadelphia project. My lunch meeting was moved to 1:30. Update the reservation at Oriole. And find out why the permits for the Boston site are delayed. Someone's dragging their feet and I want names." He rattled off instructions like machine gun fire while walking toward his office. "Oh, and Marlowe?" He paused at his door, turning back with a smile that wasn't warm so much as carnivorous. "Your test scores were abysmal. The only reason you're here is because everyone else was worse. Don't make me regret settling for mediocrity." The door closed with a definitive click. The office remained silent for 3 full seconds. Then Patricia's voice, almost gentle. "The Morrison contract is in the shared drive, folder MZ. You have 43 minutes. I'd start running if I were you." Marlowe stared at the closed door, her hands balled into fists, coffee stain suddenly feeling like a scarlet letter. Test scores. He knew about her test scores, which meant he knew she'd failed. He just didn't know that the real Marlowe Bennett, whoever she was, had probably aced it. She was already caught in a lie she hadn't technically told. And she had 43 minutes to prove she deserved a job she'd stolen by accident. Marlowe Bennett took a deep breath, sat at her desk, and opened the shared drive. "Okay, you arrogant, beautiful nightmare," she muttered. "Let's see what I'm made of." Marlowe discovered 3 things in her first 4 hours at Kane Tower. 1. She was a magnificent liar under pressure. 2. Years of juggling 3 part-time jobs had made her terrifyingly efficient. 3. Dashiell Kane was even worse than advertised. The Morrison contract revision? She'd found a template from a similar deal, adapted the language, and had it on legal's desk in 28 minutes. The environmental reports? Buried in a mislabeled folder that she'd located through sheer desperate determination. The Boston permits? Stuck because someone had filed paperwork under the wrong county jurisdiction. A 10-minute phone call fixed what had been stalled for 3 weeks. When Dashiell emerged for his Kingston meeting, she had everything waiting in a color-coded folder. He'd taken it without a word, but his eyebrows had risen a fraction of an inch. For him, she suspected that was equivalent to a parade. Now it was 12:47 p.m. She hadn't eaten. Her feet were screaming in heels she'd borrowed from her roommate, and Dashiell was on his 4th phone call, where he'd reduced someone to verbal ashes. "I don't pay you to make excuses, Richard. I pay you to solve problems. If you can't handle—" He paused, noticing Marlowe hovering at his door. "What?" She held up his phone. "Your 130 is calling. Apparently Oriole had a pipe burst. They're closed." The look he gave her could have flash-frozen coffee. "And you're telling me this now because I already moved it." She kept her voice level. "Le Bernardin had a cancellation. 1:30, table by the window. Your guest's assistant confirmed. The owner knows you, sent his regards." Dashiell stared at her for a long moment. "Richard, I'll call you back when you've located your spine." He hung up. "Le Bernardin? You lunch there every 3rd Thursday. I checked your history. You've been here 5 hours and you're already tracking my patterns? You hired me to anticipate problems, didn't you?" Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or the faintest hint of approval. "The person I'm meeting is allergic to shellfish." Marlowe's stomach dropped. Le Bernardin was one of the finest seafood restaurants in the city. "I'll call them right now and—" "I'm joking, Marlowe." His expression didn't change, but his eyes held a glint of dark amusement. "Testing you. That's—" She bit back what she wanted to say. "Very thorough of you, Mr. Kane. You're still here, which means you're either competent or stubborn. I haven't decided which." He stood, grabbing his jacket. "While I'm gone, I need the Riverside proposal reformatted. Whoever designed it should be criminally charged for assault on eyeballs. And call my mother." "Your mother?" "Tell her I'll be at her charity gala on Saturday. She's been leaving voicemails that could be classified as psychological warfare." "What if she asks questions I can't answer?" "Lie creatively. You seem good at that." Before Marlowe could process that terrifying statement, he was gone. She stood frozen in his office, all leather and dark wood and windows that made you feel like you owned the city. On his desk was a silver frame, face down. Without thinking, she reached for it. "I wouldn't." Marlowe spun. Patricia stood in the doorway, holding takeout containers. "Touch his personal items and you're done. Trust me." She set the food on Marlowe's desk. "Pad Thai, you look like you're about to faint." "I can't afford—" "Consider it a survival investment. Can't have you passing out before the afternoon chaos." Patricia settled into a chair. "You're doing better than expected." Annabelle cried by hour 3. Jensen threw his badge at Dashiell's head by lunch. Marlowe sank into her chair, suddenly exhausted. Why is he like this? Like what? Demanding? Brilliant? Impossible? Patricia shrugged. 3 years ago, his business partner embezzled $40 million and tanked a deal that nearly destroyed the company. Dashiell rebuilt everything himself, but it changed him. Now he trusts no one, expects perfection, and fires people the way most of us delete emails. That doesn't excuse— I'm not making excuses. I'm giving context. Patricia stood. He's been through 4 secretaries in 6 months. They all quit or got fired. You want to know the real reason you're still here? I'm terrified to ask. You fixed the Boston permits problem. That's been driving him insane for a month. Patricia headed for the door, then paused. Fair warning. His mother is a force of nature. Prepare accordingly. Alone again, Marlowe stared at the phone. She'd lied her way into this job. She was exhausted, verbally abused, and operating in a world where one mistake could expose everything. But she'd also solved problems. Real problems. And for the first time in months, she'd felt capable. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. The Riverside proposal better be immaculate. I don't accept mediocrity twice in one day. DC. He had her personal number. Of course he did. Marlowe looked at the takeout Patricia had left, at the city sprawling below, at the closed door of Dashiell Kane's office. Then she rolled up her sleeves, opened her laptop, and got back to work. If she was going to hell for fraud, she might as well earn the trip. By Friday, Marlowe had developed a system. Arrive at 6:30 a.m., leave at 8 p.m., and mainline coffee like it was a competitive sport. She'd survived 4 days in Dashiell Kane's orbit, which according to office statistics made her a goddamn legend. She'd also discovered that her boss had exactly 3 expressions: irritated, furious, and a rare microscopic softening around his eyes that she'd learned meant acceptable work. She lived for that third one like a Victorian woman with consumption lived for sea air. It was pathetic, really. Marlowe. His voice cut through her thoughts at 7:48 p.m. Everyone else had gone home. The office felt like a tomb made of glass and ambition. My office. Now. Her heart seized. This was it. Someone had discovered the truth. The real Marlowe Bennett had surfaced. She was about to be escorted out by security while Dashiell called the police and, "Are you having a medical emergency or are you coming?" She scrambled into his office. He stood by the windows, tie loosened, looking almost human in his exhaustion. "The Philadelphia project. Walk me through your analysis." I'm sorry? You flagged 3 concerns in the budget report. Everyone else signed off on it. Why didn't you? Marlowe's mind raced. She'd spent 2 hours last night cross-referencing numbers because something felt off. The labor costs were 20% higher than similar projects. When I dug deeper, I found the contractor has a history of inflating estimates. And the timeline seemed optimistic considering the permit issues Philadelphia's been having with environmental reviews. Dear, you stayed late to check contractor histories? I wanted to be thorough. Dashiell turned, and for the first time he really looked at her. Not through her, not past her, but at her. You saved me from a $3 million mistake. I was just doing my job. No. His voice was quiet, almost dangerous. You were doing your job excellently. There's a difference. He moved to his desk, pulled out a drawer, and extracted a bottle of scotch and 2 glasses. Drink? I don't think that's appropriate. It's not a request, Marlowe. It's a thank you. Those are rare from me. Accept it. She took the glass. The scotch burned perfectly on the way down. Why are you really here? He asked suddenly. Her blood turned to ice water. Excuse me? This job. Most people quit. You're thriving. Why? He leaned against his desk, studying her with those unsettling blue eyes. And don't give me a rehearsed answer about career growth. Marlowe made a split-second decision. Truth, with omissions. I need the money. My mother has MS. The treatments aren't covered by insurance. I'm drowning in medical debt and I'm 3 months behind on rent. This salary is the only thing standing between me and financial ruin. Dashiell's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his gaze. Why didn't you mention this in your interview? Because people don't want to hire desperate candidates. They want ambitious ones who'll pretend they're here for the prestige. She took another sip. I'm here because I need to survive. Everything else is just packaging. Silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. My father had ALS, Dashiell said finally, his voice stripped of its usual edge. Died when I was 23. The treatments bankrupted us. I built this company from nothing because I never wanted to feel that powerless again. Marlowe's breath caught. This was the most personal thing he'd ever shared. I'm sorry. Don't be. It made me who I am. He refilled both glasses. I'm a bastard to work for, Marlo. I know that. I expect perfection because anything less cost me everything once. You're not a bastard, she said, then immediately regretted it when his eyebrow arched. Okay, you're 70% bastard. But you're also brilliant and fair. You've never blamed me for things outside my control. That's more than I can say for most bosses. Damned with faint praise. Would you prefer I lie? I prefer... He stopped, something flickering across his face. I prefer people who tell me the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. The guilt that had been a background hum all week suddenly roared to deafening volume. She was lying to him. Every day. About who she was, how she'd gotten here, everything. Mr. Kane. Dashiell. His voice was softer now. We just shared childhood trauma. I think we're past formalities. Dashiell, she corrected, the name feeling dangerous on her tongue. Why did you really hire me? You said my test scores were abysmal. He smiled. Actually smiled. A real one that transformed his entire face. They were. But your resume showed someone who'd clawed their way through 3 jobs while taking night classes. Someone who understood struggle. He paused. And your interview answer about handling difficult personalities was the most brutally honest thing I'd heard in months. You said you'd reflect their energy back at them until they either respected you or fired you. I found that refreshing. Marlo's heart stopped. My interview answer. Why? Don't you remember saying it? She remembered no such thing. Because she'd never had an interview, the real Marlo Bennett had. I was nervous. It's all a blur. Dashiell studied her for a long moment, and she was certain he could see straight through her. Then he raised his glass. To surviving another week in hell. She clinked her glass against his, smiling even as panic coiled in her chest. She was falling for a man she was lying to. And when the truth came out, and it would come out, it would destroy them both. Saturday evening, Marlo stood outside the Metropolitan Museum of Art, in a dress she'd rented for $75 she didn't have, wondering how her life had become a romantic comedy written by someone with a cruel sense of humor. You look terrified, Dashiell said, appearing beside her in a tuxedo that should have been illegal. It's just my mother. She only bites on Tuesdays. It's Saturday. Then you're perfectly safe. He offered his arm. Shall we? The gala was everything she'd imagined. Crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, and women dripping in jewelry that cost more than her entire existence. Dashiell's hand settled on the small of her back, guiding her through the crowd, and she tried to ignore how right it felt. Dashiell! A woman in emerald silk materialized before them, 60-something, elegant, with the same piercing blue eyes as her son. And you must be the miracle worker. Patricia told me everything. Mother, this is Marlo Bennett, my executive secretary. Marlo, my mother, Vivian Kane. The one who's lasted 2 whole weeks. Vivian clasped Marlo's hands. My dear, you deserve a medal and possibly sainthood. Tell me, what's your secret? Stubbornness and caffeine, mostly. Vivian laughed, delighted. I like her. Dashiell, keep this one. Preferably forever. Mother. Don't mother me. You're 34 years old and married to your company. A woman can hope. She squeezed Marlo's hand conspiratorially. Dance with him later. He's excellent at it, but never does it anymore. Not since... She stopped abruptly, something sad crossing her face. Not since Vanessa, Dashiell finished, his voice flat. The name hung in the air like a ghost. I'll leave you two to mingle, Vivian said quickly, disappearing into the crowd. Marlo felt Dashiell tense beside her. You don't have to explain. Vanessa was my fiancée, 3 years ago. She left me for my business partner, the one who embezzled the $40 million. His jaw was tight. Turns out they'd been planning it for months. Took my money and my trust in one efficient move. Dashiell, I'm so sorry. Don't be. It taught me that vulnerability is just another word for weakness. He grabbed 2 champagne flutes from a passing waiter, handed her one. And that background checks should be mandatory in relationships. The joke was meant to lighten the mood, but Marlo felt it like a knife between her ribs. Background check. God, what would he find if he ran one on her? Dance with me, he said suddenly. What? My mother's watching. If we don't, she'll spend the rest of the night plotting my romantic future. He set down their glasses and led her to the dance floor before she could protest. His hand found her waist, the other taking hers, and suddenly they were moving to a string quartet playing something slow and devastating. He was an excellent dancer, confident, graceful, holding her like she was something precious. You're shaking, he murmured. I'm not used to galas, or dancing with my boss. I'm not your boss right now. Right now, I'm just a man who's been thinking about you far too much this week. Her heart stopped. Dashiell, I know it's inappropriate. I know there are rules. But Marlo, you've made me feel something I thought Vanessa burned out of me. His eyes searched hers. Tell me I'm not alone in this. She should lie. She should maintain professional distance. She should remember that this entire relationship was built on a foundation of fraud. Instead, she said, You're not alone. He pulled her closer, and for a moment, in the center of a room full of Manhattan's elite, there were only the 2 of them. His cologne, his warmth, the way he looked at her like she was a puzzle he desperately wanted to solve. There's something I need to tell you, she started, the words tumbling out before courage could abandon her. Dashiell Kane. They broke apart. A man in his 50s approached, accompanied by a sharp-looking woman with a tablet. Richard Morrison. We met last year about the Kingston project. The man's smile was practiced. And this is my assistant, Melissa Hartwell. Marlo's blood turned to ice. Melissa looked at her with dawning recognition. Wait, I know you. You're Marlo Bennett. Yes, I'm from the Stafford agency. We were both in the final pool for Mr. Kane's secretary position. Melissa's brow furrowed. But I thought they said you failed the competency test. I was sure I was the top candidate. The music continued playing, but Marlo couldn't hear it over the roaring in her ears. Dashiell's hand dropped from her waist. Excuse me? The test, Melissa continued, oblivious to the bomb she'd just detonated. The agency called me saying I was selected, but then there was some mix-up with paperwork and... She stopped, finally noticing Dashiell's expression. Is everything all right? Marlo? His voice was dangerously quiet. What is she talking about? I can explain. Did you fail the test? The crowd around them had gone silent, sensing drama. Yes, but... And were you selected for the position? Her throat closed. No. The word fell like a guillotine. Dashiell's face transformed into something cold and terrible. Then how exactly did you end up in my office? There was a mistake. They called me by accident, and then they called to correct it, but She was drowning, words failing. I needed the job. You lied. His voice could have cut glass. You've been lying to me for 2 weeks. Dashiell, please, it's Mr. Kane. He stepped back like she was contagious. And you're fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Wait, let me explain. Explain what? That I trusted you? That I told you about my father, about Vanessa, about... He stopped, something breaking in his expression. God, I'm such a fool. Patricia warned me. She said you seemed too good to be true. I was good at my job. I saved you $3 million. I solved problems that... You're a fraud, Marlo. Everything about you is a lie. He turned to Morrison, his mask of professional courtesy sliding back into place. Excuse me. I need to make a call to my legal team. He walked away, leaving her standing on the dance floor in a rented dress, surrounded by Manhattan's elite, all watching her humiliation. Melissa touched her arm awkwardly. I didn't mean to. Marlo pulled away, grabbed her clutch, and ran. She didn't stop until she was outside, the cold November air shocking against her skin. Behind her, the museum glowed with warmth and laughter and people who belonged. She'd just lost everything. The job, the money, the man she'd been stupid enough to fall for. And the worst part? She deserved it. Marlo Bennett sank onto the museum steps and finally let herself cry. Monday morning, Marlo's apartment looked like a crime scene where the victim was her dignity. Empty coffee cups, crumpled tissues, and her phone, which she'd been compulsively checking for 2 days, even though she knew no call was coming. Her roommate, Sage, appeared in the doorway holding cereal. You need to stop stalking his Instagram. I'm not stalking. I'm observing from a distance. That's literally the definition of stalking. Sage sat beside her. Babe, you made a mistake. A big one, yes, but I committed fraud. I lied to a man who'd already been destroyed by lies. I'm not a protagonist making mistakes, Sage. I'm the villain in someone else's story. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her heart leapt stupidly. This is Patricia Chen from Kane Enterprises. Mr. Kane would like to see you. Today, 2 p.m., his office. This is not optional. Marlo's hand shook. He's going to sue me, or have me arrested, or both. Then you go, apologize, and face it with dignity, Sage said firmly. You're not running from this. At 1:55 p.m., Marlo stood in the lobby of Kane Tower, feeling like a prisoner returning to the scene of her crime. The security guard who'd greeted her that first day now looked at her with pity. Patricia met her at the elevator. You look terrible. Thank you. That's exactly the confidence boost I needed. Good. You should feel terrible. But Patricia's voice wasn't cruel. He's been impossible since Saturday. Fired the temp after 3 hours. Threw a stapler at legal. Even I'm avoiding him. Why does he want to see me? I don't know. But Marlo. Patricia's expression softened. Whatever you did, fix it if you can. Because in 2 weeks, you did something no one else managed. You made him human again. The 63rd floor felt different now. Hostile. Marlo approached Dashiell's office like a soldier approaching a minefield. He sat behind his desk, looking as devastatingly handsome and cold as a sculpture. Sit. She sat. I've spent the weekend reviewing your work, he said without preamble. Every file you touched, every decision you made, every problem you solved. Here it comes. The lawsuit. The criminal charges. You were excellent. The words seemed to physically pain him. The Philadelphia contractor issue, the Boston permits, the Kingston negotiation points you flagged. All of it saved this company significant time and money. By all objective measures, you were the best secretary I've ever had. Dashiell, Mr. Kane, he corrected icily. And I wasn't finished. You were also a liar who fraudulently obtained employment through deliberate deception. It wasn't deliberate. They called me by mistake and you didn't correct them. You walked into my office knowing you had no right to be there. His eyes were chips of blue ice. Do you understand what you did to me? I told you about Vanessa, about my father. Things I don't share with anyone. And the entire time you were lying to my face. I know. Her voice broke. I know, and I'm so sorry. You have every right to hate me. But I need you to understand. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I was desperate. My mother's medical bills are crushing me. I'm about to be evicted. I saw one chance to save myself, and I took it. And I know that doesn't excuse anything, but why didn't you just tell me? The question came out raw. When we had drinks, when we danced. Why didn't you just tell me the truth? Because I was terrified of losing everything. The job, yes. But also, she met his gaze. Also you, what we were becoming. And I know I had no right to any of it. But for 2 weeks, I got to be someone competent and valued, and maybe even cared about. I've been drowning for so long, Dashiell. You were the first person who made me feel like I could breathe. Silence stretched between them like an ocean. I'm not going to sue you, he said finally. Relief flooded through her. Thank you, but I am going to make you an offer. He slid a folder across the desk. A contract, 6 months, probationary employment, same salary. You'll report to Patricia, not me. You'll work on project management where your skills can be properly utilized. At the end of 6 months, if your performance is satisfactory, the position becomes permanent. Marlowe stared at the folder like it might bite her. Why? Because despite everything, you're good at what you do. And I didn't build this company by letting pride cost me excellent employees. His jaw tightened. But understand this, we are not friends. We are not confidants. You are an employee who proved herself capable, but untrustworthy. This is a business arrangement, nothing more. I understand. Do you? He leaned forward. Because the woman I was falling for doesn't exist. She was a fiction you created. And I don't forgive people who make me feel like a fool twice. The words hit like a slap. I wasn't a fiction. The work was real. The conversations were real. My feelings. She stopped, catching herself. Your feelings were what, Marlowe? Real? His laugh was bitter. How am I supposed to believe anything you say? You're not. She stood, straightening her shoulders with whatever dignity remained. You're supposed to watch what I do. Give me 6 months to prove that the person who solved your problems, who cared about your company, her voice wavered, who fell for you despite knowing better, that person was real. The only lie was how I got there. She headed for the door. Marlowe. She turned. Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or longing, or fury. All three. Don't make me regret this. I won't. Walking out, she passed Patricia, who handed her a new badge and a stack of folders. Project management, floor 61. Your desk is being set up now. Patricia, why is he doing this? The older woman smiled sadly. Because, despite what he says, he doesn't know how to let you go. And Marlowe, neither do you. So maybe in 6 months you'll both figure out if trust can be rebuilt. And if it can't, then you'll both survive. You're good at that. Patricia squeezed her arm. Now go. You start tomorrow. And this time, try starting with the truth. As Marlowe rode the elevator down, she clutched the contract folder to her chest. 6 months to prove herself. 6 months to earn back trust she'd shattered. 6 months to maybe, possibly, impossibly win back the man she'd lost before she'd ever really had him. It was more than she deserved. She wasn't going to waste it. 3 months into her probation, Marlowe had learned several truths about second chances. They were exhausting. They required proving yourself every single day. And they hurt like hell when the person you were proving yourself to looked through you like you were made of glass. Morning, Marlowe. Patricia handed her a coffee, a ritual they'd developed. The Seattle project needs your touch. The architects are threatening to walk. What happened? Dashiell happened. He told them their designs looked like a drunk toddler's fever dream. Marlowe winced. 3 months, and she'd learned Dashiell had gotten worse. More cutting, more isolated, working 16-hour days like he was trying to outrun something. Or someone. She'd stayed in her lane, managed projects brilliantly, saved 2 deals from collapse, and negotiated a partnership that added $8 million to the bottom line. Patricia said she was the best thing that had happened to the company in years. Dashiell said nothing at all. He passed her in hallways without acknowledgement. In meetings, he addressed everyone but her. Once, their hands had brushed reaching for the same file, and he'd recoiled like she'd burned him. It was professional torture with excellent benefits. I'll handle Seattle, Marlowe said, pushing down the familiar ache. By noon, she'd calmed the architects with a conference call where she'd actually listened to their concerns, acknowledged the pressure they were under, and found a compromise that made everyone happy. The lead architect had actually thanked her for being the only reasonable person at Kane Enterprises. She was compiling the resolution report when her desk phone rang. Extension 6300, Dashiell's office. Her heart did something stupid. Marlo Bennett. My office. Now. He hung up. She found him at his window. The Manhattan skyline stretched behind him like a kingdom. You fixed Seattle. That's my job. You made them feel heard, validated their expertise, found middle ground. He turned, and for the first time in 3 months, really looked at her. How did you know that would work? Because sometimes people don't need a dictator. They need a collaborator. She kept her voice steady. Besides, their designs were actually brilliant. They just needed refinement, not demolition. I was too harsh. Yes. His eyebrow arched. You're agreeing with me? You told me to be honest. So I am. You were too harsh. You usually are. It's effective for intimidation, but terrible for morale. She crossed her arms. Was there something else, Mr. Kane? Or did you just need someone to state the obvious? Something that might have been amusement flickered across his face. I'm promoting you. Excuse me? Senior Project Director. 20% raise. Your own team. The probation is over, Marlo. You've proven yourself. Joy and pain tangled in her chest. Thank you. Don't thank me. You earned it. He moved to his desk, putting distance between them. There's a catch. Of course there is. The Miami development. It's my biggest project. A mixed-use complex that could redefine the skyline. I need someone I can trust to oversee it. The word trust landed like a stone. 3 months on site. You'd leave next week. Understanding crashed over her. You're sending me away. I'm giving you an opportunity. You're getting rid of me because having me here is too painful. The words escaped before she could stop them. Dashiell. Mr. Kane. No. Something inside her snapped. No, I've played this game for 3 months. I've been professional and distant and everything you wanted. But we both know what this is. You're running from me because every time you see me, you remember that you cared. And that terrifies you more than anything I actually did. His jaw tightened dangerously. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? You told me Vanessa taught you vulnerability was weakness. But I'm not Vanessa. I made a mistake, a terrible one. But I've spent 90 days proving that everything else was real. The work was real. The connection was real. My feelings... Stop. Why? Because you can't handle hearing that I'm in love with you? The words hung in the air like a confession and a grenade combined. Dashiell's expression shuddered completely. You don't get to do this. Do what? Tell you the truth? Isn't that what you wanted? The truth? His voice was low, furious. The truth is that you broke something in me I didn't know could break twice. The truth is I think about you constantly and hate myself for it. The truth is I'm sending you to Miami because having you here, seeing you every day, remembering how it felt when I thought... He stopped, breathing hard. You want truth? I can't forgive you, Marlo. But I also can't stop caring. And I don't know which one is worse. The air between them crackled with 3 months of unspoken words. Then let me prove I'm worth the risk, she said quietly. Not in Miami. Here, where it's hard. Where you have to see me every day and decide if what we had is worth fighting for. And if it's not, then at least we'll know. But Dashiell, you're not losing me because you can't forgive. You're losing me because you're too afraid to try. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his face went white. What's wrong? My mother. His voice was strained. She's in the hospital. Heart attack. Oh my God. Go. I'll cancel your meetings. Handle everything. Come with me. The words were out before he seemed to realize he'd said them. Please. In the car, Dashiell stared out the window, jaw tight, hands clenched. Marlo sat beside him, not touching, but present. She's all I have left, he said finally. My father, Vanessa, the partner I trusted. They all left. If she... Marlo took his hand. He should have pulled away. Instead, His fingers tightened around hers like a lifeline. At the hospital, Vivian was sitting up in bed, arguing with a doctor about discharge protocols. "It was a minor event," she insisted. "I'm perfectly fine." "Mother." "Dashiell, darling, stop looking like I'm dying. And Marlo, they told me you were still with the company." Her eyes sparkled despite the monitors. "Has my son stopped being a stubborn fool yet?" "Mother, this isn't the time." "When is the time?" "I had a heart attack. Let me be inappropriate." Vivian looked between them. "He's forgiven you, hasn't he? In his heart, even if his pride won't admit it." "Mrs. Kane, she lied to me," Dashiell said flatly. "And you've never made a desperate decision?" Vivian challenged. "When your father was dying and we had nothing, you lied on job applications, forged recommendations, did whatever it took to survive. Don't you dare judge her for the same survival instinct you have." Dashiell looked stunned. "That was different." "Was it? Or are you just afraid that forgiving her means admitting you still love her?" Vivian's voice softened. "Baby, you've been punishing yourself for Vanessa for 3 years. Don't waste more time on pride. Life's too short." "Trust me, I just got a very pointed reminder." A nurse appeared. "Mr. Kane, we need to run more tests. Perhaps you could wait outside." In the hallway, Dashiell sagged against the wall. Marlo stood nearby, giving him space. "I was 23 when Dad got sick," he said quietly. "I lied to get into a construction firm, claimed experience I didn't have. I was terrified every day that they'd discover the truth. But I worked harder than anyone, learned everything, became indispensable." He looked at her. "You're right. I'm a hypocrite. You're human and scared, and you loved someone who betrayed you, so now you see betrayal everywhere, even where it doesn't exist. How do I know you won't leave? Hurt me again?" "You don't. That's what trust is, a leap without a guarantee." She stepped closer. "But I can promise you this. I will spend every day proving I'm worth that leap. Not because I have to, because I want to." Dashiell studied her face like he was trying to memorize it. Then, slowly, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The first deliberate touch in 3 months. "Miami," he said, "take the project. Not because I'm sending you away, but because you'll be brilliant at it. 3 months, and when you come back..." His voice dropped. "When you come back, we'll talk. Really talk. About trust, about us, about whether we can build something real from all this wreckage. That's not a no. It's not a yes either, but it's a maybe. And it's the best I can do right now." Marlo smiled, despite the tears threatening to fall. "I'll take a maybe." His thumb brushed her cheek. "Don't make me regret it." "I won't." They stood in that hospital hallway, not quite together but not quite apart, both terrified and hopeful in equal measure. 3 months in Miami. Then a reckoning. Whatever came next, at least they'd face it honestly. Finally. Marlo returned from Miami on a Friday in March, when the city was caught between winter's end and spring's promise. 3 months of 70-hour weeks, of building something extraordinary from the ground up, of missing someone so badly it physically hurt. The Miami project was a triumph. She'd brought it in under budget and ahead of schedule, earned glowing reviews from every contractor and architect, and proven beyond doubt that her talent was real. She'd also spent 91 nights alone, wondering if Dashiell would keep his word. The office felt different, or maybe she was different. Patricia met her at the elevator with a hug that nearly cracked her ribs. "He's impossible," Patricia whispered. "But he asks about you constantly. Pretends it's professional interest, but we all know better." "Is he here?" "Conference room. Board meeting." Patricia grinned. "But he scheduled the rest of his afternoon as unavailable." "Draw your own conclusions." Marlo spent 2 hours settling back into her office. Now actually an office with walls and a door and a view. Flowers sat on her desk. No card, but she recognized the deliberate arrangement. Gardenias, her favorite, which she'd mentioned once in passing 4 months ago. He'd remembered. At 3:47 p.m., her phone buzzed. Rooftop, now. D.C. The rooftop garden was Dashiell's secret, a space he'd built when the pressure became too much. Few people knew it existed. She found him at the railing, looking out over Manhattan in the late afternoon light. "Miami was impressive," he said without turning. "You exceeded every projection." "I had good motivation." "Did you?" Now he turned, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. 3 months had changed him too, softer somehow, like he'd spent the time wrestling with demons and maybe finally winning. "I missed you," she said simply. "Every day, every moment. And I know I have no right to say that, but it's the truth. I commissioned a background check on you." The words should have felt like a betrayal, but his tone was gentle. "Everything you told me about your mother, the medical bills, your struggles, all true. You've been sending her 80% of your salary. You're 3 months ahead on her treatments now. You investigated me? I needed to understand who you really are, beyond the mistake, beyond the lie." He stepped closer. "Want to know what I found? I'm terrified to ask. Marlo Jane Bennett, daughter of Helen Bennett, former teacher, father unknown, worked 3 jobs through community college, dean's list every semester, volunteer at a women's shelter on weekends. Your former bosses all said the same thing. Brilliant, loyal, works harder than anyone, and fiercely protective of people she loves." His voice dropped. "You're not a fraud, Marlo. You never were. You just did what you had to do to survive." Tears burned her eyes. "Dashiell, I'm not finished." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "This is my truth. Everything about Vanessa, my father, the bankruptcy, the years of therapy I've been doing to deal with trust issues. The real me, without the armor." He handed it to her. "You shared your desperation with me. I'm sharing mine with you. Because I realized something in Miami. I mean, while you were in Miami." "What?" "That I was doing to you exactly what Vanessa did to me. I was punishing you for someone else's sins. You made one mistake born from desperation, then spent months proving it was an aberration. But I kept holding it over you, like a weapon." His hands found hers. "I'm sorry. For being cruel. For making you pay for my past. For almost losing you because I was too afraid to forgive. You're allowed to be afraid. I broke your trust. And you earned it back. Every single day." He cupped her face, thumbs brushing away tears she didn't realize were falling. "I love you, Marlo. I think I have since you fixed that Boston permit problem and looked at me like I was being an idiot for not seeing the obvious solution. You're brilliant and stubborn and honest to a fault, now, and you make me want to be better than my worst impulses. I love you too. So much it terrifies me." "Good. We can be terrified together." His smile was real, warm, transforming his entire face. "But I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more lies, ever, even small ones, even when the truth is hard. If we're doing this, really doing this, we do it with complete honesty. I promise." She laughed through tears. "Although full honesty means I should tell you I've been planning what I'd say to you for 3 months, and none of it was this eloquent. I was mostly going to beg. I would have accepted begging. And I may have bought lingerie specifically for the reunion." His eyes darkened with heat. "Now you're just being cruel. Consider it payback for 3 months of professional distance and longing looks you thought I didn't notice. I wasn't that obvious. Patricia started a betting pool on when you'd crack. She won, by the way. Guessed today within a 2-hour window." Dashiell laughed. Actually laughed, bright and genuine. "Remind me to fire her." "You'd never. She's the only person who can manage you." "False. You can manage me." He pulled her closer, until there was no space between them. "In fact, you're the only person I want managing me, professionally and personally. Is that a job offer or a proposition?" "Both. Neither. Everything." He touched his forehead to hers. "Marlo Bennett, I'm asking you to take a chance on a damaged, difficult man who's going to mess this up sometimes, but will love you fiercely through all of it. I'm asking for forever, which is insane since we've only really been together for 2 weeks if you subtract the lying and the anger and the distance. But I've never been more certain of anything. That's the most romantic disaster of a speech I've ever heard. Is that a yes?" "That's an absolutely, completely yes." She kissed him, finally, and it was like coming home to a place she'd never been, but always belonged. He kissed her back like she was oxygen, like 3 months apart had been 3 years, like he'd been starving and she was sustenance. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers again. "I need to tell you something else," he said. Her heart seized. "That sounds ominous." "I found her. The other Marlo Bennett, the one who was supposed to get the job. Oh, God. She's working in Boston, happily engaged. Didn't even remember applying to Kane Enterprises." He smiled. "Turns out the universe made a mistake that led to exactly the right outcome. How very cosmically smug. You're not angry? That it really was just chaos and chance? I'm grateful, because chaos and chance gave me you." He kissed her softly. "Although for the record, if we ever hire again, we're implementing a much better vetting system." "Noted." She grinned. "So what happens now?" "Now? We go downstairs, scandalize Patricia by arriving together looking thoroughly kissed, and take the rest of the day off. Tomorrow, we figure out how to actually date while working together without violating HR policies. Next week, I introduce you to my mother as my girlfriend instead of my employee. She'll be insufferable about being right. And after that? After that?" He pulled her close again, Manhattan spreading before them like a promise. "After that, Marlo Bennett, we build something real, together, starting with the truth and ending with forever." She kissed him again, tasting possibility and promise and a future that felt, finally, earned. 3 months ago, she'd walked into his office with a lie. Today, she was leaving with the truth, and the love of a man who'd taught her that second chances, when fought for honestly, could become the best first choice you'd ever made. 2 years later, the Miami project ribbon-cutting ceremony was everything Marlo had dreamed. Glass towers catching the sunset, dignitaries praising the design, cameras flashing as Dashiell gave the keynote speech. But her favorite part was watching him search the crowd until his eyes found hers, that private smile spreading across his face, the one reserved only for her. "And none of this would exist," Dashiell said into the microphone, "without the vision and dedication of our senior vice president of development, Marlo Kane." The name still sent a thrill through her. Marlo Kane. 6 months married, and she still occasionally looked at her ring in disbelief. The wedding had been small, just Vivian, Patricia, Sage, a handful of friends, and a judge who'd smiled knowingly when Dashiell couldn't stop kissing his bride long enough to sign the certificate. Vivian had cried through the entire ceremony, whispering to anyone who'd listen, "I knew it. I knew from that first gala." Her health had improved dramatically. The scare had forced lifestyle changes, but more importantly, it had given her what she called premium grandchild pestering ammunition. She deployed it ruthlessly at every Sunday dinner. "Your turn," Dashiell murmured, as Marlo joined him at the podium. She looked out at the crowd, contractors she'd worked with, architects she'd collaborated with, city officials who'd initially doubted a development this ambitious could work. 2 years ago, Marlo began, I walked into Kane Enterprises terrified and desperate, convinced I didn't belong. I was right to be scared, not because the work was hard, but because it changed everything. This building represents more than steel and glass. It represents second chances. It represents what happens when someone believes in you, even when you don't believe in yourself. Her eyes found Dashiell's. It represents truth built on honesty, beauty built on trust, and futures built on forgiveness. The applause was thunderous. but all she heard was Dashiell whisper, "I love you." Later, at the reception, Patricia cornered them with champagne and a knowing look. The board approved the Philadelphia expansion. They want you both heading it up. Both? Marlo raised an eyebrow. Turns out the company's most profitable when you two work together. Who knew? Patricia's smile was smug. Also, I'm retiring next year. I'm recommending you, Marlo, for VP of Operations. Patricia, don't argue. You've earned it. Besides, someone needs to keep this one, she gestured at Dashiell, from terrorizing the entire eastern seaboard. After she left, Dashiell pulled Marlo onto the balcony overlooking Biscayne Bay. The Miami skyline glittered like scattered diamonds. "Did you ever imagine this?" he asked. "When you answered that phone call 2 years ago?" "Honestly, I imagined surviving one day at a time. Everything after that has been..." She searched for words. "Magic. Terrifying magic." Speaking of terrifying magic. He reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope. "Open it." Inside was a title deed to a house in Westchester. "Dashiell, what? 5 bedrooms, 3 acres. 20 minutes from your mother's facility." His voice was soft. "I know we said we'd wait, but, Marlo, I want a family with you. Kids who'll inherit your stubborn streak and hopefully not my temper. Sunday dinners with your mom and mine arguing about recipes. A life that's messy and real and ours." Tears blurred her vision. "My mother. I spoke with her doctors. The new treatments are working. She's stable, improving even. She wants this for you, for us." He cupped her face. "What do you say, Mrs. Kane? Ready for the next adventure?" "I'm terrified." "Good. Me too." He kissed her softly. "But we're excellent at being terrified together." 6 months later, Marlo stood in the nursery of their Westchester home, painting walls a soft yellow while Dashiell assembled a crib with the intensity he usually reserved for merger negotiations. "This piece doesn't fit," he growled at the instructions. "Because you're trying to attach the headboard to the base." "I knew that." "Of course you did." She set down her paintbrush, walked over, and kissed his frustrated frown. "You know, you built a 40-story skyscraper, but a crib defeats you?" "The skyscraper came with competent contractors." Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "How's the domestic god doing? Has he fired the crib yet?" Marlo laughed, showing Dashiell. He shook his head but smiled, that real smile that still made her heart skip. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked suddenly. "The chaos? The lie that started everything?" She thought about it. Really thought. The terror of that first day, the months of proving herself, the pain of almost losing him, the joy of finding him again. "No," she said honestly, "because that mistake led me to truth. It led me to you. It led me here." She gestured at the nursery, at the life they'd built. "I regret the lie, but I'll never regret where it brought us. Even when I was insufferable, especially when you were insufferable. It made the redemption arc much more satisfying." He pulled her close, one hand settling on her still flat stomach where their daughter, they'd found out last week, was currently the size of a lemon and already making Marlo crave impossible food combinations. "Marlo Jane Kane," he murmured against her hair. "You walked into my life like chaos incarnate and turned everything upside down. You made me trust again, love again, hope again. You're the best mistake I never made." And that's terrible poetry. I'm a developer, not a poet. Lucky for you, I have terrible taste in poetry. She kissed him, deep and slow and full of promise. "I love you, even when you can't assemble cribs. I love you, even when you're smug about crib assembly." They stood in that sunny nursery, surrounded by paint cans and instruction manuals, and the beautiful chaos of building a life. And Marlo thought about phone calls and second chances, and the strange, perfect way the universe sometimes got things exactly right by getting them completely wrong. 2 years ago, she'd been a desperate woman who'd lied her way into a job. Today, she was a wife, soon-to-be mother, successful executive, and the woman who'd taught Dashiell Kane that love was worth the risk of trusting again. Tomorrow, they'd face new challenges: the board, the pregnancy, the constant juggling of work and life and everything in between. But they'd face it together. Honestly, fearlessly. And yes, still occasionally terrified, but in the best possible way. Because the truth, Marlo had learned, really does set you free. Especially when it's built on a foundation of forgiveness, second chances, and a mistaken phone call that changed everything. The end.